See, Stephen is asking, I was thinking about joining a Buddhist monastery. I feel like spending time purely on meditation will help me overcome a lot of my ego. Do you think this is a good idea? When you say join a Buddhist monastery, do you mean ordaining, or do you mean just joining a monastery where you go in and sit with them? Yes, ordaining. Okay, so Stephen, if you're thinking about ordaining, there's so much to this question because I'm really split. In some way, I was ordained for 6 years, and it was really good for me in so many ways. It helped me. I mean, I could not have practiced the way I did if I wasn't ordained. But as far as taking your ego away, I mean, people use terms like that, ego, a lot, and it's very easy to throw them around. But if you look at what it actually, I mean, what happens when you go and become ordained as a Buddhist monk, the problem is that you get a really big ego from that, because all of a sudden you're not just anyone. You're someone special. You're on the path, and it's very easy to get a really big ego. I don't actually use the word ego. I use the term sense of self, meaning the sense that this is me. I am separate somehow. And I found that many people ordained actually get a stronger sense of self because now they're on the holy path, the spiritual path. So from that perspective, ordaining can actually be a hindrance, can make it more difficult. The other part that is difficult is that it's, even though I mean, people in the West don't see it this way, but Buddhism is a religion. I mean, you can't get away from that, especially if you go to Asia. Buddhism is really a religion. It's not a philosophy just as we see it in the West. There's a lot of religious elements to it, and if I wouldn't have had my drive to figure out what was happening inside of me and to meditate, because that's why I left to become ordained. If I didn't have that myself, I would have become a Suddhahandra, which is like a white monk. Well, I was a Suddhahandra, a white monk. But I would have been at some temple chanting beautifully, because I have a background in singing. So I would have been chanting beautifully all these chants in Pali, and people would have said, oh my goodness, he is so Buddhist. This is so beautiful. He left the life of luxury in the West and came to us to live the true path. But I wouldn't have done anything. I would have just learned to chant songs and live by these precepts, which, I mean, if I would have been thrown out on the street without any money and become a beggar, that would have been quite similar in many ways. So it is tricky to actually get it right, and you need to find a temple where you feel comfortable and where they practice the way you want to practice, because you might actually want the religious part. Me personally, that's not at all what I do, and I consider that more philosophy. And if you're interested in that, then yes, sure. So should you ordain, if you have the ability, I recommend you to try it, because I mean, it is an incredible experience. And really look for where you want to do it first, because that can make a big difference. If you ordain in the Theravadan tradition in Burma, you're going to have a really tough time. You'll be meditating at least 10 to 15 hours per day in really gruesome retreats most of the time, and it's really focused on the meditation. It's very strict, really hard. Wake up early, meditate all day. Whereas if you go to Sri Lanka, you would be more of a temple monk, depending on where you ordain. But then it'd be more likely that you'd be a temple monk who did rites and rituals. If you went to a plum village in France, then it's much more about mindfulness. They sing, which is like completely unheard of in the Theravadan tradition, but they sing, they meet lay people, they're much more interactive with the community. There's more of a mindfulness-based practice where you focus on issues, internal issues. I see Esperanza is saying, so before ordaining, visiting meditation for lay people or retreats at a couple different temples is probably a good idea to get back to know the practice, I guess. Absolutely. I mean, if you're going to ordain, I really recommend you going around and looking. There are a lot of people in Asia who'd love to have Western people coming ordaining. And if you're not Western, they love to have people ordaining anyway. It is important to find a teacher and a center where you feel comfortable. And I almost said safe, but I mean, monks can be strange people too. Just because they're ordained, don't think that means they're holy people. Hopefully they're really following their precepts and doing the things they're supposed to, but it doesn't mean that they're always people you want to hang around with all the time. So I would really make sure that you feel comfortable there, that you feel you can learn something from them, and it's a place you want to stay.